introduce you.
Okay.
Where are you, by the way?
I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, at University of Virginia,
All right. I think
about 100 miles south of Washington, D.C.
all right. I don't think I've ever been there, but there you go. You have family there or something?
Yes, my wife and I are here, all children somewhere else. This is a historical town in the United States, Monticello, Monticello, Thomas Jefferson.
It's there?
Oh,
Monticello's there.
yeah, Charlottesville, Virginia.
Mhm.
And he started University of Virginia. So University of Virginia is one of the oldest universities in America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here, let's get started. I
Okay.
want
Okay.
Okay. Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and today we're going to go to Virginia, but
Okay.
I have a real treat for you. We're going to visit someone with whom I have I have utmost respect, or for whom, someone I've looked forward to talking to for many years. I was once in an audience where he was a speaker, but we've never actually met until now.
Okay.
So now we're going to have a conversation. And this is
All right.
Dr. Vamek Volkan.
Yes.
And I believe the topic of your speech when I heard you something like 40 years ago had something to do with transgenerational trauma. At any rate, in the meantime, I've heard of you many times, Dr. Volkan, and always or generally in the connection of talk about how if one person is traumatized, it's possible for the psychological effects to be transmitted to their children and even to their grandchildren and
Yes.
so on,
Yes.
so that what harm you do to a person
Yes.
can live on beyond you.
Yes.
And I think that's what you talked about, and that kind of research in psychiatry is what I think you've made into a very important issue, right? So, hello, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. Uh-huh.
Well, if I may, allow me to give some little background. Uh, uh, I'm a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst.
Well,
And
I want we'll come back to that because
yes, yes.
I'm very interested in how all these pieces of
Yes.
you fit together. Mhm.
How did I get to know about transgenerational trauma? Of course, I saw that in my patients, but I think that your emphasis is in international relationships
Mhm.
and how I became aware of it. In 1977, Anwar Sadat, who was the president of Egypt, went to Jerusalem. He gave a talk at the Knesset. He declared that 70% of the problems between Israelis and Arabs is psychological. He talked about a psychological wall. And this is how American Psychiatric Association and American Psychological Association became interested in looking at external world from a psychological point of view. And I got involved in this. Long story. So the first one was putting together Soviets, Americans, influential individual to talk. And this made us important and we got grants. And after the Soviet Union collapsed, we worked 7 years in the Baltic republics, helping Russia and Baltic Republic to separate in a
Lithuania, that kind of area.
in a peaceful fashion.
Mhm.
And we were bringing high-level Russians and high-level Estonians. Even one of the Estonians became the president of Estonia later on. And we had the second person in Duma from Russia. And, Estonians had lived under others, including Soviets, so long, and they were not able to talk. They were shy in front of the big shot Russians. Slowly, they got the courage and they said something not so bad, but how they were hurt by Russians and so on. On this, the second man from Duma, this Russian guy, suddenly started to talk about Tatar-Mongol invasion. Way back. We were shocked. And he dominated us. For 2 days, he talked about Tatar-Mongol invasion, some past historical event. And the idea was that Russians were conquered by Mongols and they tolerated this and they protected Europe from Mongols. And how dare Estonians were complaining about Russians when Russians were running Estonia. They were not like Mongols, they were nice people protecting Estonians. So this is my first and most important experience that suddenly all historical events become involved in present day problems. And we also brought Greeks and Turks together.
Who?
Greeks and Turks. Turkish people
Greeks
and
and
Greek
Turks. Now,
yeah.
now I imagine that's because of your own background, that you are
Yes,
yourself a Turk born in Cyprus.
Cyprus. But and as soon as we develop unofficial diplomacy, we can go into later. But as soon as Greek representatives get somewhat anxious during these dialogues, you know what they start talking about? The conquer of Byzantine by the Ottoman Turks, 15, 1653, whatever, 600 years ago. So I learned this and the importance of transgenerational transmission, how they become involved in present day issues became very clear to me. And I wrote a great deal about these things. And I call these issues chosen traumas. Some traumas, like the Holocaust, it's still so hot. If you go to Yad Vashem, still you get and you meet people who had grandparents or relatives who died in the Holocaust. So it is not yet a chosen trauma. It is not hundreds and hundreds and hundred years old. It is undigested. But even now, as we are talking, the Israel-Hamas war taking place, and everybody, not only me, but so many people talked about how Hamas terrorist attack induced the feeling of the Holocaust in Israelis. And same time when Israelis attacked the Gaza, and Gazans about October War and how they were pushed away. So past historical events get transmitted generally from generation to generation, and they become chosen traumas. And if we do not pay attention to them during the official dialogues, you can talk until you are so tired. You want to go to bed. So this is why my 30, 40-year work in international affairs taught me that we need to pay also these rather hidden aspects of resistances. And that could help.
Yeah, I host a monthly town hall meeting for people all around the world who are activists.
Yes.
And one person who generally shows up is Dr. Charles David Tauber in Vukovar, Croatia. And he very frequently mentions your work because, of course, I think the classic example of that chosen trauma of somebody picking on an event hundreds or 1,000 years ago, practically,
Yes.
would be there's a certain defeat that the Serbs went
Yes.
through in some place.
At the hand of Ottomans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is
The Battle of Kosovo.
well, yeah, I don't remember the title. I just remember that they bring this up and they
Yes.
sort of celebrate it every year, you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
keep it going.
Yes.
And so, and of course, his work is exclusively with the victims of trauma, people who have themselves been through war.
Yes. Yes.
And he's still finding that the effects of
Yeah.
the war 30 years ago
Yes.
in Vukovar or in that part of
Of course.
Croatia
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. When I
are
mentioned,
still.
I
Mhm.
want to mention that when I'm talking about the Battle of Kosovo, I'm talking about Serbs, not about Croats. But in every problem with Croats or with others, Serbs go back to the Battle of Kosovo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Uh, but as in another sense, there is the transmission, not necessarily with the reference to history, but
Of course.
simply the fact that if a person has come out of a concentration camp or has been
Yes.
tortured or
Yes.
whatever, and this certainly has a psychological trauma,
Of course.
and that their own children will probably in some way
Yes.
be affected by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we
Yeah.
let's talk about that, because I mean,
Yes.
we always start
Yeah.
off with historical, and it's
Yes.
not just that,
Yeah. That is, it was named by William Nederland, who passed away a long time ago, and he was kind of a mentor to me. He named it survivor syndrome.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And in the psychoanalytic literature, there are many, references to survivor syndrome, that people who survived had all kind of feelings like loss, grief, not being able to go through mourning, sometimes guilt, they survived and others died, and so on. So that in the psychoanalytic literature, there are all kind of references to this topic. And one of my former residents, my students, who became a very famous psychoanalyst, Ira Brenner, uh, published probably one of the last books about this. I forgot the name of the book, but it's international. He collected articles internationally about survival syndrome and what happened after Holocaust, how it's perceived, and was published. So it's true. We always have uh, survive and they don't. For example, you mentioned that I was born on Cyprus, a Mediterranean island. And when I was growing up, my next door neighbors were Greeks. You know, we have Armenians, Greeks, Turks in Cyprus, and so on. But we were called natives by the British.
I'm sorry.
We were called natives. British called British for the British colony. We were natives.
I see. Okay. They're lately calling people like me settlers
Yes,
here.
settlers or natives. Yes,
First time I
from
heard it, I
Canada.
thought,
Yeah, you know. So, but when Cyprus gained its independence and the British left, and of course, both sides have mother, quote unquote, mother countries. They had Greece, they had Turkey, and who's going to do this, and so on, and all this murders and so on. My family lived for 11 years uh, surrounded by enemies, so to speak. And I was living in America. You can imagine my survival. So everybody has all kind of feelings about what happens to people, not only just relatives, but people who belong to the same large group identity.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, and then some. I consider that probably maybe the worst thing going on nowadays is that we have these identity fights,
Yes. Yes.
and whether or not you've been traumatized or you're the
Yes.
dominant
Yes.
person, it sure
Absolutely.
plays into a lot of politics,
Yes.
especially today, and it
Yes.
seems to be getting worse.
Yes.
I don't know whether you think so, but I think
I do. I do
it's on
think
the
so.
roll.
Yes.
And you would think it would diminish. I mean, we are having, I mean, here you and I are 1,000 miles apart, and
Yes.
you might as well be in the next room,
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
this closeness of the world and the easy access to each other, no matter where we are, should diminish our affiliation with a particular piece of territory. It doesn't seem
Yes. Yeah. I wrote also about this incredible technology, artificial intelligence, and so on. So in a sense, it opened borders between different countries and groups. Like, I push a button, I can talk to you, and so on. And there are positive aspects, but also induced anxiety. And it brought about what I call who are we now civilization.
Oh,
Yes, who are we now civilization after a war, like after Soviet Empire collapses. People say, who are we now? The Republic of Georgia, they were under Soviets. Now they are different. So, colonialists leave Africa, and Africans say, who are we now? Now, who are we now? Everywhere. I mean, I don't remember exact number of refugees. I mean, there are millions and millions.
yes.
Yeah. Talking about Cyprus, I was in Cyprus last summer. It's not Cyprus that I knew when I was growing up. Uh, I had not seen people from uh, black skin when I was growing up. There were only three people that I knew. And now, when you go to Cyprus, some my neighbors, my next door neighbors, are all from Africa.
Are all what?
From Africa,
From Africa.
because they opened so many schools, universities in Cyprus, and everywhere there are Africans. There are Russians, there are Israelis, Russians, and Iranians buying this land or that land. So, question comes: who am I now? I'm not suggesting anybody. By the way, everybody is same. Wherever you go, human beings are the same. We have the same psychology, same mind, same background. But uh, you get into you open borders, you hold between borders. It's wonderful, but at the same time, it induces anxiety. So we are uh, what I call a civilization of who are we now civilization at this point. And it's
Well, now tell me
adjustment.
whether, if by input, I mean, of course, all I know about Cyprus
Yeah.
practically is that the Greeks and the Cypriot
Yes.
Turk population have not gotten along for a long time, and there certainly has been
But
a
that's not
tension there.
also change. Like if you go to Cyprus right now, the first people come to see me are my Greek friends from the south.
Right. Well, what I was wondering, would the opening of the gates and the
Yes,
fact that you have so many Africans and uh, other newer populations
yes,
coming in,
yes.
does that weaken the tension or the focus on the Greek and Turkish conflict? Or
No, I mean,
does it
it's
have
not
any
only
bearing
that,
on
everywhere, everywhere. And you know why Donald Trump won presidency? Very simple to me. I wrote about this too. said, "Oh, we are going to be invaded,
Mm.
and I'm going to put a border. It is, in fact, I'm going to put a dome over America so nobody can come in." This kind of thing. So that the world is changing incredibly.
Mhm.
You see, I mean, some of us, I, for example, I'm sure you, I enjoy seeing differences. It's nice to see, get to know, and so on. I've been all so many places in the world. I mean, many, everywhere. It's so, but for some other people, this is perceived as dangerous. They want to close the borders and this and that. I'm not talking about realistic difficulties. I'm talking about psychological aspects.
Yes, right.
And right now, there is no place on earth where the borders are really closed.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Well,
we
in
are,
Canada today, there's a new rationale,
yes,
and that is we are having a new sort of issue.
yes,
They've just been shutting off the number of foreign university students who are allowed to come and study here
yes.
because there had been a large population of university students from all over the world.
Same
And
thing everywhere.
they say the rationale for this, and it may have some the housing, we have a shortage of housing.
Yes,
I would have thought if you have a free market that we would have just had plenty of housing, and why not?
yeah,
But at any rate, the rents are very high in cities
yes,
and so on.
yes,
And they're saying that it's because these university students are coming and renting all of the cheap apartments for
yes, yes,
so that's why they're shutting it off.
yeah,
Now, this is the first for the last, I've lived here for 50 years or so. But I'm American born, but
yes,
generally Canada's been pretty welcoming to
yes,
foreigners.
yes,
But this is the first time I can remember in a long time that there's been any effort to slow down or
yes, yes, yes,
the
yeah,
immigration.
yeah,
And they claim this is for a financial reason
yes,
that it's not working.
yes,
But I don't know whether you can separate out the psychological and the material
yes,
explanations
yes.
going
Well,
on.
you're absolutely right. There are realistic reasons. And when politicians look at issues, they refer to these realistic reasons. We
Mhm.
don't minimize them because they have to deal with realistic reasons. But at the same time, we need to realize there are psychological reasons and they're hidden. And what I've been doing is to bring the psychological reasons to the surface so that it can be dealt with, it can be understood, and then you can find more peaceful, more mature way of dealing with these issues.
Good for you because that is so very important, I think. And yet I think it's such a tricky thing to do.
Yes,
Of course, you are trained in therapy, and I would think, for example, if you went to one of Trump's supporters, and
yes,
God knows he has enough
yes,
right now, and you said, "Well, now you need some psychotherapy because you like Donald Trump." And your rationale is really pretty loopy. You shouldn't be basing your politics on these crazy identity things. I don't think that would fly. I don't. I,
it wouldn't that would be funny. It wouldn't work out. I don't want to be beaten up.
look, I
No,
have
I don't want that
relatives.
anybody
I
who
I have a close
yeah,
relative
yeah.
who's a Trump supporter,
I
and
have
I really
friends.
don't know how to talk to
I
her.
have friends there.
I really want to tell her, honey, you should get some therapy. But on the other hand, I don't know any therapist who could do
Well,
anything for her.
I don't. The issue is protection. We have two identities: individual identity. We have a large group identity. In our daily life, we deal with our individual identity and so on. And under certain circumstances, large group identity becomes more prominent.
Becomes what?
More visible, more, you feel more. And
Mm.
under those conditions, you do everything to protect your large group identity. Let me give you one example.
Mm.
After Sadat went to Jerusalem and we were bringing high-level Israelis and Arabs, I became the head of this committee. We were bringing Egyptians and Israelis together. I brought for the first time also Palestinians in this meeting. And we were meeting in Switzerland when Palestinians from Gaza, West Bank, and so on, also 4 of them, joined us. So when the meeting started, I'm sitting here next to me, a very famous Israeli general, General Shlomo Gazit, sitting. And next to him, a much younger man from Gaza, a Palestinian psychiatrist, sitting. And so when the meeting started, this young psychiatrist put his hand in his pocket, his trousers, touching something. And I'm a psychoanalyst, so I thought maybe he's having castration anxiety. Said, as long as I have this, Loma Gazette, General Gazette, you are a very important person, you are very good, you are very important. But since you retired, Israelis are sending federals that would not like to run our lives. As long as I have this, I can hold my large group identity and I can tolerate masochism and sadism. You know what he had in his pocket? A little stone with Palestinian colors.
Oh,
You see?
and he
That,
needed all that?
yes, because the large group identity was more important than individual identity. And I learned that in those days, so many years ago, every Palestinian in Gaza, I don't know everybody, he said every, had this little stone they painted with Palestinian flag colors and put in their pockets.
Really?
And whenever they would see an Israeli soldier or something, they would touch it in order to keep their identity survive. So under certain world events and so on, suddenly your large group identity becomes more important than your individual identity. And that leads to all kinds of problems. And these are the things that we are writing about to explain. There are psychoanalysts at UN, I give lectures at UN, etc. But still, we need to explore these things so that there are unseen, unthought of resistances to find peace. And this is
Okay,
what
I want to talk about how you actually help people who have this, what I would call a problem, but they obviously don't think it's their problem. They think the problem is in the other side. But at any rate, but one of the first thing that occurs to me is that I believe you're still affiliated with the Austin Riggs.
I worked there 10 years. I'm emeritus.
Okay. Well, in any case, at the time, I was thinking, I can't quite visualize how psychoanalysis, or at least the kinds that I'm familiar with, could be very useful in handling that kind of psychological trauma, that intergenerational identity issue.
No,
Uh,
psychoanalysts cannot do that.
no. So that's what,
We
well,
have,
good.
we have to,
I'm glad you said that.
psychoanalysis, I mean, they go to their offices, their patients. I spent 30 years bringing together Arab and Israelis 6.5 years
Mhm.
before the also things. I worked with, after Jimmy Carter was no longer president, I worked with Jimmy Carter Center for years. I went to Africa with Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter, bringing together African leaders.
Wonderful. Mm.
I put together Georgians and South Ossetians. I brought together Turks and Greeks. I brought together Estonians and Russians, Latvians and Russians. I mean, so don't think that a psychoanalyst know this thing. I went into this thing as a psychoanalyst and applied my psychoanalytic insights, my experience. Without experience, you don't have any much idea.
Mhm.
So you cannot say that psychoanalysts know. You go not on the door of psychoanalyst and tell me what's going on. No. In fact, psychoanalysis during clinical practice usually does not pay much attention to shared external events.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there are therapists
Yes, of course.
who do, I
Yes,
mean,
of course. I like
certainly,
it.
but
do too.
I don't think they call
Yeah.
themselves psychoanalysts. I don't know whether there's
Yes, of course.
is there a category title for
Yes.
the people who are psychiatrists
Yeah.
who do just general counseling on interpersonal relations and those traumas of that kind.
And my team was not all psychoanalysts.
Mhm.
We had to have historians. We had a Princeton historian. We had to have a diplomat. We had a undersecretary of state, former. We had linguist. So our team was an interdisciplinary team.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, did you do mostly group therapy or individual?
Therapy, we don't call it therapy. The psychology principle is that we do not tell these people what to do. We help them to talk for years, every 4 months or so, and they come up with their own solutions.
Okay. Now, my friend Charles Tauber
Yes.
has a program going on now where he trains people to do therapy by Zoom, all kinds of places, and he calls them barefoot therapists
Oh, yeah.
that would take ordinary people and mostly train them how to listen,
Yes.
as if that is really the most valuable thing you can do for
Well,
that.
I stopped seeing patients by the time COVID came. I have never done therapy via Zoom. I have done a lot of supervision in many different countries, supervising other analysts' work by Zoom. Yes.
Mhm. Well, tell me give me a better understanding of how you would go about helping or treating, if you don't
No,
mind
don't treat anybody.
medical terminology, helping somebody who is really controlled by that kind of ideological.
You're talking about individual therapy?
Yes, when if you do therapy, let's take, I mentioned a relative. I won't say which of my
Yeah.
family members has this disorder, but she's a real maggot person.
Therapy is,
How should I treat her? How
well,
can I
I'm
help her?
I'm a psychoanalyst. I'm a classical psychoanalyst, and today also psychoanalysis became a whatever. Oh, so many schools every day. There's a new school, and you have super democracy and so on. I never got involved in the politics of psychoanalysis. Somebody comes and lies on my couch in the past, you see, I just do psychoanalysis, meaning I help this individual to understand his or her own life stories and how these stories affect him or her and why and so on. And then the patient himself or herself changes and makes decisions to do this or that differently. the
Well, yeah, but
psychoanalyst.
now, excuse me, but you got to, my sense is that to be a good psychiatric patient, a therapy patient, you got to want to see your own shortcomings and problems and acknowledge that they are problems. But the thing about this identity politics, which is so important and that, you know, so often connected with chosen traumas of ancient vintage,
Yes,
uh, is that these people don't think there's anything wrong with them. They just want to blame their ethnic opponent, whatever group
yes.
that is,
Well,
and are not ready
yes,
to see that they need to
yes,
rethink their own
yes.
assumptions.
Well, if anybody was interested, I wrote just 10 books, single story of a psychoanalysis from beginning to the end,
Mhm.
so that it shows you every step. And in that, for example, in the 1970s, 80s, when I was seeing patients in Virginia, most of them were Southern Virginians and Northern America, Southern America, Civil War, slavery, everything was part of their story.
Mhm.
And how they resolved it is in some of these books. For example, I saw a patient who was in his 50s when he came to see me, who was from a very prominent family, white family, very rich, raised by African American nana. So the mother, real mother, was African American, not white one. You see? So, but in Virginia, he had to behave like a, big white guy with big money. What he would do early in the morning, as soon as he would stop, he would go to the craziest part of Charlottesville, very poor part, to an African American restaurant. He would be the only customer early in the morning. He would sing songs to him. He would feed him. You see, he would remember his childhood that way. And then cut that off, go to his office, get dressed, and be a big businessman. But that was his problem. You see? So that understanding Civil War, his family, and all this stuff, and he changed them. So if anybody wants to know how a psychoanalysis, as I practice, changes people, and how a psychoanalyst works in this process, I have written 10 books describing from beginning to the end
Mhm.
psychoanalysis.
Well, would you give us a title for one that you especially urge us to look at? I can't, I have to admit, I haven't read any of
Okay.
those.
Uh,
Let's see if you can. Okay, that's good. Show us a few books about that.
Here's
Is that
one. Here's one. Would be white wife killer.
would-be wife killer? All right.
Wife killer.
Uh,
Uh,
huh.
Here's the one that I told you about, who used to go to
Mm. Oh,
searching for a
uh,
perfect woman.
searching for the perfect woman. All
Yes,
right.
it was the
It-
rich white
this,
guy.
this is a
So,
rich white guy who was
yeah, who
okay.
was raised by a black nanny, and black nanny did mothering. Really, real mothering was black nanny.
Um,
All these things that happens in our external world influence us,
yeah.
sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a very difficult way. So that don't say that go to a psychoanalyst and psychoanalyst tells you what you have to work on this thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and study external traumas or external world. I mean,
But
only
you
thing,
know,
yeah,
even those of us who, I mean, I'll never be a therapist,
Yes.
even a barefoot therapist. But
Yes.
uh, I I certainly occasionally have to interact with
Of
people
course. Of course.
whose attitude is certainly colored by their
Of course.
this dynamic of
All of us.
their
All of us.
psychological the effect. And I don't know how best to deal with these conflicts over identity. I tend to just change the subject because I just
You're
don't
talking
know.
about large group identity,
Yes, I mean,
ethnic identity, religious, national.
how do I
Yeah.
if my family members are in favor of Donald Trump, for example, and I think the rationale for it is about
Yes. Yes.
somehow group identity, that their sense of status has been threatened and they're trying to
Yes.
defend it
Yes.
through their group identity.
Yes.
Um, how do I treat that and get along with them or help them maybe see past that
I
kind
have no idea. If they lie on my couch for 6 years, let's
of,
find out what is best for them.
well, why I can't get them onto your couch.
I
I would
have no
love to
couch
get on your
anymore at my
couch.
age.
Sounds like I've been on couches and I got a lot of value from it.
But as I say, I wrote, I don't know how many books, 60, 70 books I wrote. And
Yeah,
they explain this thing, not only the individual, but also societies, what happens in societies. They also have, like individuals have a history, societies have their history, and even you're not aware of it, histories are affecting you at the present time.
okay. Well, I gather then that there's no easy way to say how to get people past this particular hang up. Now, I mean,
Noisily.
Charles Tauber teaches people to be therapists just in the sense of listening
Yes.
to other people's moaning and grief. But and I'm sure that's can be valuable. But I've also had people go on.
Sometimes I watch television, and on television, people go to see psychiatrists, psychologists. And as soon as I listen, is that they just talk. They ask questions and psychologists give ideas and so on. It is not psychoanalysis whatsoever. Nothing. I turn off. I don't watch those movies. It's nothing to do with actual therapy.
Well, but you don't call yourself psychoanalyst, do you? I mean, do you
I do.
say what you're doing is psychoanalysis?
I'm a psychoanalyst. I got trained.
Well, of course you've been trained, but
I did, I did psychoanalysis. I have books. I'm telling
but
you.
these therapies, these books that you just shown us,
Yes, there are
are the
psychological
result of
processes.
psychoanalytic process.
Processes. 3 years, 4 years, 6 years from beginning to the end, so that it illustrates what happens in psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you
The
have a
therapy that you talk to the patient and you give advise or do this or that, that is not psychoanalysis.
right? All right.
Psychoanalysis is helping the individual to understand himself or herself and decide what to change.
I would think that if you were trying, I'm not, I guess I could never be a psychoanalyst in that sense because I really want to influence people. I want to fix them,
But
have a I want to get in there with my hand.
why not? I mean, that's a wonderful, wonderful wish you have. Yeah.
But I'm not good at it and I don't ever succeed. That's that's the thing.
Well, that's not true either in the sense that because you wouldn't be talking to me if you did not have some success in what you've been doing.
Oh well, I
Yeah.
have I enjoy these conversations with people, and I have some conviction that by putting them out there on the YouTube and our website, that other people occasionally will get some value from listening to it too, as they
Hopefully.
will probably from listening to you.
Yeah.
So I feel it's worth doing,
Yeah.
but I certainly I don't think I could be I guess I'm not as good a listener as I am a director about how people should
Good
behave.
for you. Enjoy it.
But I thought maybe you could give me some advice, and it sounds like that's not
No,
what.
I don't give advice.
But you do seem to have the conviction that by listening to people and helping them in this very subtle way over a period of several
They
years,
help themselves.
they get better. They do.
They help themselves.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, can we think of ways in any kind of project? I'm talking about
Yes.
um, a global project or at least a national campaign or some kind of new institutional arrangement for
Yes.
addressing these
Yes.
issues. If you're going to, because one-on-one is a very slow way of changing the world, and there are not ever going to be enough psychoanalysts around to make
Also, psychoanalysts are America especially. There's so many types of psychoanalysis. I don't know who is called psychoanalyst.
uh, uh,
But
okay.
I want to tell you that I started a process group called International Dialogue Initiative.
National what again? Say
International Dialogue Initiative.
an international dialogue initiative. Okay.
www.internationaldialogueinitiative.com. We got this. I knew people from so many different countries because I worked in so many different countries. I got in touch with Lord John Alderdice in United Kingdom. He's from Ireland. He's he's head of he's a parliamentarian, and he's also a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. And I said to him, why don't we bring kind of intellectual and influential people from different countries so that we can look at world affairs together. So from 8 different countries, we start bringing people together. United States, England, Germany, Russia, Turkey, Israel, West Bank. What am I missing? I'm missing one. Yeah. So we start bringing this group together, and this group started also uh, opening up consultations for people who are dealing with world affairs, want to do this or that in Africa or here. They come and they meet with us and we give them suggestions. So International Dialogue Initiative now, we also call ourselves family. And we don't want new members to come in. We select new members. We select two, about 22 of us. Selected one from Poland and another one from England. And you may want to go to the National Dialogue Initiative and see what to do. Everything is there. And obviously, we have, after the war started between Israel and Gaza, we have members from Israel and we have Palestinian members. We are communicating with them and they communicate with each other to see what they can do locally. And we do not have yet a very serious way approach. Serious way of approaching, I call it the tree model. Tree model has 3 phases. One, we, myself, and my members from my team, including a historian and a diplomat and so on, you go to a troubled country or a country in some kind of problem with a neighbor, and we spend months or years. I don't mean to say same time. We go again and again. And we talk to from president to taxi driver.
Mhm.
from people our age to it's in the elementary school.
Mhm.
And we find out, beside the realistic problems between countries, what kind of psychological issues are behind.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
That is phase one. After this, we don't do this secretly. When we go to these places, we always go and talk to, if president's available, president or king or whatever. We talk to them or their prime ministers or something, so that we do not do it secretly. But dialogues are just ours. Okay. After this, we also know people who's influential in these countries in conflict, and we choose maybe not more than 12 on each part, and we start second phase, that is dialogue between these influential people who have connection with their governments, who have connection with their parties or organizations and so on, or universities. Mostly, for example, we choose some rectors of university or president's best friend or something. And we bring them together depending on grants. Without grants, you can't do this. But grants doesn't pay us any money. I never got even one single penny doing these things for 30, 40 years. Not my people. We only got our university salaries, nothing else. We get grants to bring them together every 3 months or 4 months, sometime in neutral countries, sometime in one country and the other country. So they talk. And there we use psychological approach. We do not give advice. We let them know why they have this or that, why they're afraid of this or that. Some simple things. For example, Estonia becomes independent from Russia. And there's the boat named Estonia, and the captain was Russian. And when they became independent, they put the captain, which was Estonian, and the boat sank. And that ruined Estonians' feeling that they will not be able to be an independent country. We find things like that. And we have these people talk, and they come up with own solutions. And they go to their own governments, they make new arrangements. Okay. And after this, we go to, if there are internally there are problems, then we go to different parts of the country. For example, Estonia, there are cities, 50% of Russians, 50% Estonians.
Mhm.
And Estonia becomes independent and they will change there, but they don't know what to do. So we go to those places and have them talk and so on. So our work in international relationship is not advice or suggestions. Our work is like psychoanalysis. It takes years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. I was involved with something similar to that a number of years ago. I was active in something called the Helsinki Citizens Assembly during toward about the time that the Cold War was coming to an
Yes.
end.
Yes.
And we had meetings where
Yes.
at one point I remember there were 5 wars going on in the region. It was Azerbaijan and Armenia, it was,
Yeah.
Ossetia, it was in
Yes.
Georgia, all
Yes.
these ex-Soviet countries.
Yes.
And they were each going through independence
Yes.
and had internal factions that were really
Yes.
very.
Yes.
So
Very
what we
familiar.
did, we had a Dutch guy, Jan Faber, who was the moderator. We
Yes.
would bring these people together around a
Yes.
big table, 2 or 3 people from each of these countries that were in
Yes.
conflict with each other. But they had to take turns.
Yes.
First, they'd work on the discussing the Armenia and Azerbaijan
Yes.
files.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody else had to listen,
Yes.
wait for their turn, for
Yes.
then maybe the Ossetians get their
Yes.
turns going. So, but the thing was that it had to be translated into English
Yes.
they could talk to each other in Russian,
Yes.
but
But
the moderator didn't know any Russian, so everything they had to slow down, and everything had to be turned into English for him. And it was very helpful because it slowed them down. They
Good.
could, if they got heated, they had to
Yes, yes, yes.
be quiet a little while, and then the other people could listen. And we found that the other people listening could see their problems in the group that was making the, was in it
Yes,
at the moment dealing with theirs.
yes,
So everybody could see something about their own issue
yes,
by
yes,
listening to the other
yes,
conflict. It was
yes,
very valuable. So
yes,
I came home back to Toronto and I thought, I'm going to try to set up something where I'll get together
yes,
the Serbs and the Kosovars at
yes,
the same table
yes,
with the Sinhalese and the I'm sorry, the the other guys in Sri Lanka.
yes.
I have
Right.
it's interesting that I'm blocking that. Those people lived with me for a long time, and I can't remember their,
Yes,
ethnic identity. It's certainly an interesting,
yes,
problem. But but the point is, I brought these people. We worked together to prepare for this.
yes,
They were going to take turns
yes,
listening to each other
yes,
as
yes,
they worked on
yes,
their own issues. And
yes,
because I thought the Serb and the Kosovar conflict had many things in common with the
yes,
fight, in Sri Lanka, which both wars were going on at the same
yes,
time.
yes.
We could not get them into the same room with each
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
They would not, they
yeah,
would talk to us separately, but
yes,
they wouldn't
yes,
be, they would not listen to their opponent
yes,
in their identity problem.
yes, yes,
And it was only, of course, after the war they would, but
yes.
while the war was going on, you couldn't get them into the
No,
same room.
no.
And I was very disappointed because I thought, I worked for 6 or 8 months trying to get
Yes,
people ready
yes,
to have this, and it
yes,
just didn't work.
yes.
Uh, would you say that would be what you have to expect in such a
Well,
situation?
human beings are chimpanzees kill other human beings. The chimpanzees kill other chimpanzees. Other animals don't do that. And this is part of our makeup. And so whatever we wish and whatever we try to make peace, I think should be edifying for us and helpful. But also, I have the pessimism that wars and all the bad things will continue to happen. I mean, look at what's happening right now. So we should, I'm making a summary. Being a psychiatrist or sociologist or historian alone, you can tell many important things. It is all, you have to put all together. And even if you put all together, it's still, sometimes they can listen to you, sometimes they cannot. Uh, but what uh, my team and I, we wrote so much in books and so on, and not in America, but other countries, uh, were able to listen to us. They were really able to do peaceful things.
Why
And
do you think in America they wouldn't? This is interesting to me.
America, I was invited to give talks at CIA and FBI and so on. And then they came to me and they said, would you join us, be a CIA? I said, I'm sorry, I want my academic freedom, and so on. And still now and then, we even gave lectures. My team, and we 10 lectures we gave.
Mm.
But America is so big and so on. I mean, it's depends on who's the president, who's what. I got to know Jimmy Carter very well. I worked with Jimmy Carter, son Roosevelt. My God, they're such good people. I mean, I went to them to told you I went with them to Africa. And one night we were sitting around, we had a hotel just for us, a small group. Olaf Palme's wife was there too, and staying in his hotel and all. And one night I was saying jokes and all. One night Jimmy and Rosalind are not there. I said, what happened? Oh, they said to me, they got in a little plane and they were going to fly somewhere, land in a river, and war is happening on both sides, and they were going to stop it. My imagination was they're going to land and they're shooting and they may get killed. And I couldn't sleep for 3 nights until they returned. This kind of, people also become leaders, but there are also all kinds of things. So the issue is we are coming up ideas and books and so on describing the psychological aspects of large group identity and relationship and so on. And slowly this may find their ways to international politics. And why I am so hopeful? I tell you, the biggest gift I got for what I have been doing in my life, the biggest gift I received from what I have done is almost every other week, some student, university student from somewhere from the world, from India, from Croatia, whatever, writes to me, and they're using their doctor thesis on this topic, so that there's a generation that are reading these things.
So you're hopeful that other younger people will not have quite the same hangups.
Well, it could be, from what I'm perceiving, is that younger people are paying more attention and writing their doctorate thesis on this kind of psychopolitical issues.
Well, I hope you're right. I sure do, because I certainly see that it is a very, very crucial factor in the future of the world, really. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is absolutely wonderful talking to you.
Thank you. I'll be meeting you again if we were able to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And God bless. Take care.
Bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.